This is basically my favorite subject. In nature, in nature, nothing is wasted, right? Every single component of nature has a function and it's there for a reason.
Hey, Carl, how's it going?
It's going so great, Iram. Welcome to everyone to the Grow Everything podcast. How was your Thanksgiving, Iram?
It was fantastic. It went by so fast, though. My Thanksgiving this year was with our friends, local neighbors, and I was really excited for it. And it just happened in the blink of an eye. And here we are, just on the other side of it. What about you?
Yeah.
How was your Thanksgiving? I know you were jet setting around the world a little bit beforehand. Tell us about it.
So I don't know about jet setting. Does it count if it's jet setting if you travel for work? I don't think so. So I was in Paris because I was helping to facilitate a meeting with a group of biomanufacturers and big brands that are working to biologize their businesses. And the meeting was great. And I will reveal more about that as we get closer to the project's completion. But I'll just say Paris was, first of all, it was freezing cold, but at least the sun came out. I have been in Paris in January when the sun doesn't come out and it's not so magical, but it felt very crowded and it was really great to be there for a couple of days. And then I came back and kind of had the house to myself because my family was upstate because my father-in-law just had heart surgery and he's doing very well. But I don't think I've ever had a Thanksgiving by myself. So I visited a couple of my neighbors, one who's a shut-in just to make sure he's doing okay. And to spend the time after the trip to just kind of get over the jet lag. But before I left, we did something exciting. We went to Caveat in Lower Manhattan to their trivia night, which is like a science trivia night. That was a lot of fun. What do you think about it, Iram?
Oh, yeah.
It's like your third or fourth time. I've only gone twice.
Oh, yes, yes. It's hosted by a group of scientist comedians. Their group is called Facts Machine, so FACTS Machine. You guys can look them up, and of course, we'll put them in the show notes, and you can follow them when they have different trivia nights, but they also have a podcast. You can listen to some of their shows on the podcast. And it's just incredible. I mean, like, first of all, you have very intelligent PhD candidates or postdocs, and then you have them being very funny. And like, humor is the highest form of intelligence. Like, if you can laugh at something, it's just, okay, it's a very intellectual exercise. So it was great to be there with you, our associate Lizette, my friend Ed also came. And it's just, chock full of activities and of course, facts about, this theme was about human evolution. So we learned a lot about different primates. It was hysterical. I know you had a really good time and we're like, I have to take my wife here.
Yeah, no, I came home, I described it to Kristen, and she was like, I really want to go to this. It sounds like a lot of fun. And it is a lot of fun. I mean, I've gone twice, you've gone a number of times, and it's just a great evening. And it's fun to see a bunch of people in the audience laughing at science nerds and science nerds being funny. And I think we need a lot more of that.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And then we've been really busy. You mentioned, you went to Paris talking to a lot of biomanufacturers and brands. And we've been really focusing in this world of consumer packaged goods, so CPG. And it's really something that we're bringing together. We'll have more of a focus on it early next year on the podcast. And think of it more of like a crash course, but more of like a realistic crash course in biomanufacturing, because we're going to talk about what are some of the priority molecules and products that need to be made and who wants them, who's making them. So I think it's going to be something that listeners are going to be excited to learn about, because these are products you use every single day around you, on you. And for these products to not only be made more sustainably, but to have higher performance and to work with their biology is a very exciting thing.
Yeah, and I'll just mention that we've had a lot of people over the years come on and talk about biomanufacturing, the challenges associated with biomanufacturing and its importance. But now when we talk to these CPG companies, which we are going to have a big focus on in 2026, you'll see how that biomanufacturing gets applied at scale, because some of these products are produced in the hundreds of millions of tons. And a lot of times when people think about biotech products, they think of things that are produced in very small quantities, which is definitely true for biopharmaceuticals. But CPG often requires huge volumes. And so I think it's going to be really exciting for you to learn about how people are taking biotech to increase performance, as you said, Roan, and also sustainability. one of the great things about doing that is we've been able to gather some people who are some of our favorite people that we know either from SynBioBeta or Biofabricate. And today's guest is someone who comes from that world. You want to talk about our guest today, Iran?
Oh, absolutely. I am going to talk about Lauryn Menard. She is an incredible force. So she's the co-founder of GOB, which was named Fast Company's most innovative companies of 2025, which we'll talk more about in the episode. But what GOB has done is created the first biodegradable soundwear or earplugs that are engineered for comfort, performance, and designed to return to the earth within weeks. Lauryn launched GOB to challenge how we consume everyday products, so blending both cultural relevance, which we'll talk about a lot, and material innovation. We love talking about biomaterials here on the Grow Everything podcast, so why don't we let Lauryn Menard take it away? Lauryn Menard, welcome to the Grow Everything podcast. We're so happy to have you here.
So stoked to be here. Thank you.
Yay. Well, we're particularly excited because you have been on fire lately.
Yeah, for sure.
You had quite the year.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, you're recognized by Fast Company's most innovative companies of 2025, one of Time Magazine's best inventions of the year. And you've collaborated with Billie, Eilish, Chappell, Roan on getting your product, the GOB earplugs, into the world. So that's incredible.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a whirlwind. Can't say that I saw this coming at all, but here we are. We're doing it.
Awesome.
Yeah. So let's get into a little bit. We want to learn a little bit about you, how you got into this, and like what's going on. So first, talk to us about how you came into the world of GOB. So you've been leading design through fashion, furniture, brand work, and then you founded GOB, which is a compelling transition. So what was a moment when you realized that single-use earplugs and other single-use products could become regenerative products, and what sparked that leap?
Yeah, well, basically my entire career, I've had these really weird titles. So I've been given jobs that people never knew what to call me, right? So somewhere between material and design and brand sometimes. So there was always like innovation consultant, material innovation. And the word innovation was always in there. Basically, about a couple years before starting GOB, I co-founded a design agency called Prowl Studio. And that was basically the intention behind that was to do the work I was already doing with my co-founder and be able to help companies bridge the gap between mass manufacturing and better materials. And just because they usually don't have an internal team that knows how to do that or has the language to even begin researching. So we were doing that, and Prowl's still alive and well, but I stepped away basically because just my entire career was spent working on luxury goods, or we'll call them innovation products that never really saw the light of day. And I got pretty fed up with that. I just was using earplugs constantly and had this aha moment at a spin class. I won't tell the whole story, but basically it was like, oh, this is simply a material problem. No moving parts. There's got to be something better than this on the market. There wasn't. Found out that they were made out of polyurethane and PVCs that are really harmful for humans and planet. Saw the number of them the world produces each year, which is 40 billion. And I was like, wait, this is a huge problem hiding in plain sight. Let me try and fix it. And basically, just through that, it just snowballed into its own business. And now my full time job as a startup founder. And the earplug was the segue into single use, right? It's like, this was our pilot, this is our debut product. But now I'm like, I want to take all these not so sexy products and make them sexy again. Maybe they never were sexy, make them interesting and make them out of healthier materials. So, yeah, it's a weird journey.
Bringing sexy back to earplugs. Great.
That's right.
That's amazing. So at GOB, you talk about beginning with the end in mind, designing a product that returns to the earth. How did that idea or that ethos change your approach to design from day one?
Yeah, so that ethos actually comes from Prowl, the agency. And that way of thinking was basically everything stemmed from that ethos, right? So if we thought about a product's end of life at the beginning of its design conception, then we will inevitably create something healthier and more responsible. Because usually that's the afterthought, right? But every single product, no matter how beautiful it is, no matter how relevant it is in a moment, we know this by now that it will someday have its end. Whether it's no longer relevant, it's obsolete, or you just used it and now it's done. You have to have a plan for that when you're designing it. It's our responsibility as creatives and designers to do that. And so we just decided to take the end of a product's life into the design phase. And I think it's been pretty successful thus far. And I think that's just how I design now. That's just part of how we think about every single thing we create, including packaging and everything we touch, basically.
Wow. Yeah. I wish more people thought like you. That's incredible thought. We wouldn't be in some of the big
Working on it.
situation we're in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Yeah. All
right.
the pollution
That's
and
right.
everything, but we're working on it. So that's wonderful. So on this podcast, we talk to many people in the biotech, biomaterial space, and we've learned that there are different types of materials. There's bacterial cellulose, there's algae, there's mycelium, which is the fungal material you decided to choose as the core of your product. So, what drew you to
Mhm.
mycelium, and what surprises did you face when working with it to make a high performance wearable product?
Yeah, this is basically my favorite subject. In nature, in nature, nothing is wasted. Every
Hmm.
single component of nature has a function and it's there for a reason. Like flowers, for example, we find them beautiful. That's their function in our lives. But they're pollinators. They spread their seeds to feed animals and they're part of this beautiful system, right? But when we are creating something that's man made, we are creating something that's functional for our own lives to make them more comfortable, more convenient. And basically, when you are working on a new product, especially something that is as we'll call it form wise simple, right? It's doesn't have any moving parts, it's nothing but its material. You have to find the material that serves the function you need, right? And more than likely, everything we create comes from nature. And so what we did was we were looking at materials that dampen sound in nature. That brought us down a bunch of rabbit holes, but basically, does mycelium try to dampen sound in nature? No, but the way that its form is grown and the way that the specific material we use is created, it actually does naturally dampen sound. It took us maybe 8 months to find this material, and when we set out to find a foam, we set this criteria. We wanted it to be home compostable, completely plant-based. It had to dampen sound, and it had to be extremely comfortable. And about 6 months went by, we weren't finding anything that was not stuck in the lab prototype phase. We either found something that, like, wasn't comfortable or not quite the right consistency. But randomly, I had seen this prototype from Ecovative of their foam years before at the Biofabricate conference, and I had been bothering them, "Can I please get a prototype of this? Can I please get a prototype of this?" And 6 or 8 months into the discovery process, I actually got an email back from them that was like, "Hey, Lauren, you're the first person we're emailing. Our" they call it aerial mycelium, "is ready to try out. We're gonna send you some, see what happens." And we basically just found a way to poke a few cylinders out on our own and tested it, and we're like, "Oh my god, it works." So, it's kind of a messy process to find the material match, but they exist, I will say.
That's amazing. I mean, do you know what does it look like at the incubative factory when they grow these things? Are you guys punching them yourselves or do they do that for you?
So, the Ecovative is our material supplier. It's actually Forager by Ecovative, it's one of their brands. And they're growing this mycelium material in these huge, like 25-meter by 5-meter, I believe, sheets in racks. And this is weekly, which, if you do the math, that's over 1 million earplugs in 1 week that could be grown. It's wild. And so when people worry about scale, like, it's not a problem. It's a renewable resource through and through. But it is grown into this wet, fluffy material. It's then dried in their facility, which makes it so that it stops growing. It's completely inert. It's just an incredible material. And once you like heat it up and it stops growing, it basically is stable. And in that stable form, we receive it in sheets and we process it into our product. I can't tell you exactly how we do that because that's part of our IP, but we created this automated system that produces our earplug.
Got it. And just going one more thing about earplugs, because you had said, here's this overlooked product that is also a problem, because something like you said, 40
Hmm.
billion are produced each year. How do you look at
Hmm.
something so small as having such big potential?
There's volume and scale. Someone said to me recently, if you're dedicating your life to stopping the plastic pollution problem, why are you working on something so small? And I started asking them, do you remember when people started talking about plastic straws and how big of a problem those are? Oh, they're small, but the scale and the volume is just tremendous, right? We're talking billions. When you're talking billions, our brains can't even fathom what that looks like. If you were to
Right.
take 40 billion earplugs and put them into one space, it would look like a mountain. It's huge.
Hmm.
It could wrap around the planet more than once if you lined them up. And so for me, a lot of designers and a lot of people love spending their time, which we need both, right? And I was one of these people spending my time on these big, beautiful things that are physically large, like furniture, for example, and working in that arena. But those aren't produced at the scale of single use products are. We're not consuming them and going through them constantly, right? So, my take on this is I would rather spend my time on the things that people aren't looking at that are produced at mass scale than on these sexy things that are produced in smaller volumes but are like physically large, if that makes sense. We have to do all of it. We have to be reinventing our material world, but I just am kind of sick of things getting stuck in this like quote unquote fixing these more like sexy, luxurious products, right?
I just want to make a comment for our listeners in case they don't know this. If you go into a CVS to buy earplugs, you're probably going to buy 10 or 12. Like they come in a small pack, there's a dozen of them. And if you
Hmm.
go to like a Granger or like a hardware store, you're probably going to buy a container that probably has 100 or 200 of them in there.
Hmm.
So they add up really quickly and they're really cheap. I think like 10 at CVS maybe costs $5 or $6, and the big packs maybe cost like 20. So the scale is there.
Yes. And to continue talking about scale, I think it was really beautiful when you talked about how much mycelium your partner can produce in a week
Hmm.
versus how much like you can sell. So this is always a big controversy or like a roadblock to maybe investors, other people when they think about biomaterials. They say it can't scale, it can't get to price parity. And then like when you came to biofabricate and I started learning more about GOB and you were just like giving it away, I'm like, is she just throwing money away? Like, how much money did this woman raise to be able to hand this biomaterial? Because these biomaterials are so
Hmm.
expensive. How is she doing this? But now I get it. So, like, thanks for sharing that perspective on like scaling isn't an issue, and that's a renewable resource can be made in big scales. You just need to do it.
Yes, and with time, our pricing will come down even more. That's our goal is to replace these commodities, right?
Mhm.
It will take time because we're basically replacing something that is almost free because it's made out of basically the byproduct of the petroleum space and the oil industry. And that disconnection, a lot of people don't think about that when they're using products that source of this thing is the same source that you're pumping into your gas vehicle. And I think that that
Mhm.
disconnect is just like, wait, what? And gas is getting more expensive. Is like maybe plastic should get more expensive, right? But yeah, scale is not a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah. And the whole pervasiveness of petro-based chemicals is one of the reasons why we have this podcast, because it's like, let's highlight those things. I mean,
Hmm.
earplugs, earbuds, all the single-use products that you mentioned, and of course, the things
Hmm.
that we eat. There's artificial dyes and everything. And so thank you for doing what you're doing. I had a question really about this intersection between entrepreneurship and design. And there's pressures on both of those sides. So, how do you balance the pressure for how your product looks and feels, which is, yes, they're earplugs, but you have done a beautiful job of designing it and also the packaging and everything, with what it material does and becomes? Like, how do you balance to make sure that it functions but looks cool at the same time?
Well, I will tell you, I did the classic designer thing. My business partner from Prowl and I were both industrial designers. And when we first started prototyping with our mycelium material, we were like, surely we cannot ship a cylinder. It's not sexy. Like, we can't do that. And we prototyped and tested maybe 20 to 25 shapes that we thought were, quote, more interesting, could be more functional. We kept making up these reasons. I'm going to be completely honest. And we ended up back at a cylinder because we had maybe 2,000 user testers,
Mhm.
and everyone's ear is a different shape. They're like snowflakes, which is kind of funny. And so we had to find a universal shape. And our product doesn't work like the ones we're used to, where you like squish it down and then you push in your ear and it opens up. It's the chemicals that create memory foam that are toxic for us. And so without those chemicals, you just have to push our product into your ear and it will form to it naturally. And
Mhm.
so after all this testing, after all of that, we did end up at a cylinder, and internally, we were calling it the DFC for a while, the dumb effing cylinder, because we were like, "This is so silly," but it works, and so if the product is so simple, it's about telling compelling stories that people can connect with in a way that's accessible for people. So we don't I don't use the word biopolymer in our branding. We don't use, like, biofabrication that often. We say mycelium, but then in the science page of our website, we say, what the F is mycelium? Most people don't know, right? This group of people listening to this podcast probably do know that it's the root structure of a mushroom. It's not the fruiting body. Most people don't know that. And sometimes people hear mushroom and they get really freaked out. Like, we get questions all the time. Will I get a fungal infection in my ear? And we have to
Right.
be like, no, no, this isn't a mushroom. It's actually hypoallergenic. And so we have to do a lot of educating, but
Mhm.
that's actually the exciting part for me, is teaching people about the magic of what nature has created. And our material partner have figured out how to work with. The way that I like to frame it is they partnered with nature to make this beautiful material. And so it's not hard for me to feel creative in telling those stories. That's maybe my favorite part of my design career, is that it's taken me to this place. But when the products become simpler and simpler in form, the creative aspect is in the storytelling and in the packaging, quite honestly.
Oh, actually, since you're speaking of packaging, do you have a package in front of you? I actually have one. Should I go run and grab it really quick?
I have a small one. I have a
Okay.
whole inventory.
Yeah. I've got them too, but I didn't go to the other room to get them.
Good thing I live in an apartment. But anyway.
Yeah. So there's this whole thing where like sustainable or eco-friendly products kind of struggle to resonate with mainstream consumers. How have you built up not just to reach the climate warriors, but everyone? Talk to us
Mhm.
about music venues and how that's translated into everyday users.
Oh gosh. Well, the unfortunate news is that something being quote unquote sustainable, better for the planet, does not convert people to a sale. Consumers care, but a company and a brand have an added layer for someone to want to spend money on it. And there's a small niche group of people who purchase simply because of environmental reasons. And the mass majority of people do not fall under that category. And so, knowing that, having worked with companies, like Target, BMW, Herman Miller, these like massive companies that wanted to do better, still want to do better, but are caught in the capitalist cycle, right? It's like, all right, well, how do you make something better that basically people will care enough about to purchase? And so there's a couple layers of this. There's cultural relevance, there's storytelling, and I think there's also a layer of how does it benefit your personal health? And this is something we're starting to hyper focus on more is people may not really care in their heart of hearts if something is polluting the oceans, if something is causing soil toxicity. They might not understand that, but when you explain that it comes back around and it actually creates a toxic environment for their body, or by having plastics on their body, it can have health effects. That does actually move the needle because people want to live longer, healthier lives now more than ever, right? So that's a story that we tell through and through. But the way you make it exciting is by leveraging culture and being part of the culture in a way that doesn't feel like you're paying an influencer to talk about something in a way that falls flat, right? So, what we do and what we did this summer is we had two pilot venues in New York City selling our product so that when people were at a show under the K Bridge or Forest Hill Stadium in New York, they could be grabbing a drink, getting ready to see one of their favorite artists that they spent lots of time and money to get there to enjoy, and they could discover our product in that moment when they needed it. And so those pilots went very, very well. And we do intend to do more of that in the future. Those seasons just ended, which is very sad. But it's really interesting because it's this opportunity to really connect with someone at this heightened emotional moment. And not every product can be relevant in those spaces. And so we knew it was, and that was a really amazing discovery because it feels like a marketing Trojan horse, right? A lot of beverage brands do just that, where they try to find these cultural spaces and you don't wanna, like, always do an activation at these spots, like, you don't wanna be like, "Come to our booth," right? You wanna just, like, be there and be a part of it in a way that's not forced. So, anyway, we will continue to do that, and we'll continue to do events and meet people in real life because we don't just want people to discover us by scrolling. We want people to be having the time of their lives in these heightened states. The dopamine is riding high, and then GOB is part of it, and it's like, "Hell yeah, I want more of that," right?
So beautifully said. I mean, one of the things we say is the importance of in real life experience, IRL experiences, and people wanting that, right? Get away from the screens. We've been in front of screens for so long, and to be able to first go out and see a concert and then have other products that help enhance your experience. And for earplugs at concerts, I think it's a beautiful thing because, there's times where it does get loud. I mean, I'm getting older. So when I go to these concerts, it can be really loud. I still want to be there amongst people and experience things, but I just do need a little bit of a softening of the noise or the volume. So you're talking about concerns of health. That sound is like a concern, like your ear or your ear health, hearing health.
Hearing protection.
Hearing protection.
Yeah, hearing health is a good way to put it. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. And it's beautiful. It's just not like in your face. You don't have this like big Instagrammable green balloons everywhere so someone can take a selfie in front of the thing. It was cool at first, but now it's getting a little too much because I've seen it at these concerts on the beverage side. I won't mention the brands, but you guys, I'll call it. Oh, actually, one of those rings is made from mushrooms. Actually,
Funny.
And they're doing the
Yeah.
activations.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Rise. I will say Rise.
Yeah.
I mean, it's cool. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
great drink. I mean, it's nice. I don't want to miss anything, but we were at this concert and it was just so much stuff. They had one of those Italian carts that were selling like espresso, like their espressos and an actual mascot walking around. I'm like, okay, cool, but too much. It's a little extra. I get it.
Yeah.
You have a drink and you're trying to sell it. We get it. I see you.
Yeah.
Our version of that is so bare bones. And
Yeah.
our version of that is, I think it kind of freaked people out when we first had the idea. But basically, we did this photo booth where all we had was a backdrop and a leaf blower. And we call it the blast booth. And people put our earplugs in, we hit them with a leaf blower, and we take their photo. And what they take away is digital, not physical. And so there's no waste. It was just like purely for the fun of it. And then they could share the image, but we're not going to do that constantly. And yeah, these activations can get really out of hand really quickly and just feel like so wasteful, right? I mean, I come from the
Yeah.
exhibition space where
Mm.
something's up for a day and then it's wasted. It's like sometimes that waste is way more than your product waste. It's insane. So yeah, we wanted to make sure that when we're showing up in these spaces, we're showing up responsibly. Because also, like,
Mhm.
if you don't and you claim you're a responsible company and you show up with all this stuff that you made custom, people are going to call you out these days. They're not afraid to
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah, I'm just thinking
Yeah.
of all that. I hate to say it. Like, you go to a trade show or a show and all the stuff that people put on their tables, like the banners behind you,
Mm-hmm.
it's just all single use
Mm-hmm.
plastic printed with who knows
Totally.
what kind of ink. So all that stuff also needs to be reimagined and redone.
Yeah. Yep.
I couldn't
I-
agree more. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk about your product pipeline in a second, but you're not just an entrepreneur, you're also an adjunct professor at California College of Arts. And that's so amazing because there's so much you just shared already on this episode that is so helpful for designers and entrepreneurs. And you also mentioned that some of your students listen to this podcast. So hello to your
Mm-hmm.
students.
Yo.
What up? What up?
Oh,
So
they're going to love that.
yay, what's up? The question I have here is what lessons or mindset shifts do you hope that your students take away from your class seeing GOBs out in the world? What can you share with them?
Well, every single time a new semester starts, and the class is called Future of Biomaterials. We have students from graphic design, interaction design, architecture, and there's always at least one or two students when we start, presenting the content of the class that raise their hand and say, I'm not a scientist. I shouldn't be in this class. And it
Totally.
happens every time without fail. And it's my favorite because I'm not a scientist. Suzanne Lee, who inspired me to basically take this path, she's not a scientist. And it's really interesting how I have to convince them that they will be able to invent a new material and create something new out of it by the end of the class. And sometimes students drop before we even get there. But most of the time, when they stick with it at the end of the semester, it's just incredible. So basically, the goal of the class is to get students to do exactly what I did, which is start by making biomaterials in their kitchen and understand that the building blocks of most materials are very simple. They might be things they already have in their cabinet, like agar, calcium carbonate, baking soda, all these things that you can put together to make alternatives to plastics or whatever leathers or whatever material you're trying to create. And so, I mean, the majority of the class truly is just taking something that looks like goo and making it not goo anymore. That's really what it is. It's like, look at this disgusting petri dish of like last year we had a student who was trying to take stale bread and turn it into something. And she was blending up bread with water and it was disgusting. But in the end, she turned it into a paper pulp that she molded into packaging. And the majority
Wow.
of it is that, right? And so it's just a beautiful journey seeing these students go from this mush into like a finished good. And most of them have come to me after graduation to be like, I want to do biodesign, but I know that that's not a title that exists yet. How do I do that? And I was like, oh, this is exactly the question I asked my entire career. The answer is you have to create it yourself. You just do. I think it just opens up their minds to questioning everything, basically, and knowing that there are a lot of, I also like to expose my students to companies that exist that do just that, who create better, healthier, biofabricated or bio based materials that they can then implement into projects for their client. So it's just a matter of like breaking down those barriers, breaking them down a little bit too, like bringing them back down to earth and understanding that design starts with this messy kitchen slop, honestly.
Yeah, and don't be afraid of science. Come on, people. Students
That's
listening,
right.
don't be afraid. We're all scientists. If you're curious, you're a scientist. So,
It's not math.
it's not math. And we joke around
Hmm.
about it too, in a way, because we're like, we deal with bio nerds, but we also have had to deal with math nerds. And let me just tell you, it's like a different planet. And we love them both.
Definitely.
But anyway, so you're teaching this biodesign class, you're mentoring these students who are becoming emerging designers. What do you think the biggest misconception these new designers bring to sustainable product creation beyond the science?
Well, I would say just like the next generation of students gives me so much like optimism and hope. I also just am so sick of like these generational generalities. A lot of folks are, oh, Gen
Totally.
Z, they are so sucked into their phones. Actually, no, a lot of them are connecting more and more with the real world. They're going places and not recording it. Like, truly, it's not just like a one way. They're not just one thing. Like everyone said, millennials are just lazy and entitled. That was our thing, right? So basically, what it's done is I think that's a misconception. Is it hard to get students away from their computers and into making things? Yeah, but once you get them doing it, it empowers them to do more of it. And so they're really, really great, fast learners. And especially if you see these like micro improvements on what you're working on, it's empowering, right? But each class, something goes a little bit right. And then they come back and then they want to do more and more and more. And at the end of the semester, they're not fulfilled because they feel like they could push this further, right? And that's exactly what I want. And so, one, it's bringing a whole new class of designers into the world that I think we need. They're going to push the boundaries and tell people, no, I'm not going to source that material because it's made out of petrochemicals and toxic, right? But it also is bringing in a more curious group of people into the design field that aren't just going to believe that the only part that they can have an impact on is form and function. It's actually the material and the contents. And understanding it only takes, I mean, now we have AI. It's not
Mhm.
amazing at bioeducation, but it's pretty good.
Mhm.
And some of them, I think what's interesting is you can put in a white paper and have it explain it to you in ways that are a little bit more accessible. And I found that my students, that's how they're using AI is they're finding these bio white papers and they're having it explained to them in a way that they can actionize. Those are the things that
Yeah.
get me excited.
I love that word actionize. I have to
I
use
think I
that.
just made that up.
Okay. No, well, that's great. Oh, God, your storyteller. Amazing. Amazing. Oh my God, I
I
love
don't
it.
know.
Okay. Maybe put that
Sorry
in the
for the
title of
English
the.
nerds out there.
No, no,
I
no.
make up words.
You're an entrepreneur. You have to bring things into life, like new words. It makes sense. I mean, it worked for me, but this is such a good topic because you cross a lot of things, like the generational generalities. I mean, that's a big thing. Not
Mhm,
everyone is the same. Age is just a number. And then
mhm,
anyone can be a scientist. Carl, you mentioned that earlier too. It's just that it's just a toolkit.
Yeah.
And then with AI, I mean, I've used AI to ask to make unique bio products and it doesn't get it right sometimes, but it's a
no,
start. It's a
mhm,
start. Like at least start trying and then figure it out for yourself and having the ability to decide and know what's right and what's wrong. But like, just get started. This is the same thing about AI helping with writing, right? Like it solves the blank page syndrome. Like you don't know where to start. Just ask AI some questions. It's going to give you some things. And then it's like, all right, thanks for getting me started. Let's go. So I would love to talk a little bit more about the future of GOB, right? You
mm,
have the earplugs, you can make as many, you can make 1 million a week if you want to. And you talked about on stage when we were on a panel together, I moderated a panel about storytelling. So a lot of the stuff we had talked about before. So bringing it to our audience now. But you were talking a little bit about other single use plastics. So talk a little bit more about what you would aim to go. Talk about if you had no constraints, what would your next category be? Tell us a little bit more about the future of GOB.
mhm. Well, I've been in active fundraising mode. So basically, this is what I talk about every single day right now. And sure, most earplug companies, they named themselves to only ever do that one thing. Like a lot of them are like hearing or ear related names. And a lot of single use products, period, do just that, where they like stay in their lane, they do one thing, take breathe right strips, for example, right? It's like they only do that. And on the other side of the table, there's this like obsession with the beauty industry, the personal care industry, the wellness industry to make the formulations of the things we're putting on our bodies and in our bodies to be completely non toxic, to be responsible, cruelty free, all these things. But the applicators, the delivery mechanisms, the other things that we have in our travel bag, they just get forgotten about and they're just like, "Oh, I'll just grab the bag of these. That's the only option on the shelf." And so I just kind of feel like I'm that person who's replaced all my cosmetics, all my personal care products with waste free, healthier, vegan, cruelty free, check all the boxes. And I still use cotton pads that are probably bleached with,
Mm.
sometimes it's more quote unquote responsible with like hydrogen peroxide is actually used to make cotton pads white. It's that plus bleach. And so you're
Mm.
actually putting hydrogen peroxide on your body when you use them, whether you want to or not. And so there are all these like hidden things where we're not questioning those products, we're questioning the other more beautiful ones. And so let loose, handcuffs off, like what can God become? I want to become the like 3M or Unilever of the next generation of the better, more beautiful, optimistic future. And so right now we're focusing on the products we're developing are very much in line with the things that you use when you go to bed, when you travel, when you're at a fitness class that are single use that go hand in hand with earplugs. But then the intention is like that's the now. Then there's the near, which is more like beauty focused, that kind of world. And then we plan to get, which will take more FDA approval into the sexual health world. Because
Mhm.
let's face it, when you see single use products on the ground, what's the most disturbing one to see? It's a condom on the sidewalk. Well, I don't want to see that ever
Right.
again. So basically,
Or
I
a,
just want to
yeah.
take everything that we see polluting that's single use and just like, let's make sure it's non toxic, it's interesting, it's under the GOB umbrella, it's more fun to use, more functional, because that has to be true if we want to fully replace the nasty ones. And then,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
let's make sure they don't last longer than we do as humans. That's like absurd.
It's interesting because there's two different options which a lot of entrepreneurs face. You're either going to go deep or you're going to go wide in terms of going
Hmm.
deep into the earplugs market. And like, you mentioned concerts, of course, but then they show up in airplanes and in hotels and different places, which I think
Construction sites.
Hmm.
construction sites, which will naturally happen, I feel, for you. I mean, I have been thinking about that because we talked about that before. Also, then the single use, as we mentioned, condoms, mentioned. Actually, we
Hmm.
had interviewed Gabe Tavas of Symmetry Wood before you, and we asked him, like, what type of biomaterial product would you want to see? And he said, earbuds, like Q-tips. And at first I was like, oh, I thought he said
Mm-hmm.
earplugs. I'm like, oh, God, it exists already. But he had mentioned earbuds. So I'm not sure if that's on your
I've never heard
roadmap.
them
But
called that before. It
yeah,
actually is on our roadmap. Yeah, so that's interesting.
earbuds.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. So it's interesting. And I love the big vision. I mean, this is entrepreneurship, right? Be the
Hmm.
3M, be the Unilever, because you clearly have a lot of mycelium at your disposal.
Yeah, and I will note that none of the products we're developing right now will be out of mycelium. And
Yeah.
so we're basically going back to that drawing board of we need something to replace one for one this thing that people use and love, a
Yep.
mass scale. We're using films, we're using latexes, and I'm using words that are plastic based because we don't have new names for them. And that was a whole conversation at Biofabricate, which is you create new names for everything and then it becomes confusing. But we also need new names that aren't latex or plastic. So, anyway, that's a whole
Mhm.
other conversation. But we are working with seaweed based materials, we're working with fiber based materials, and like we're not stopping at just mycelium. I just want to make that super clear. Although it does have a few use cases that will come into our portfolio, but it's whatever bio based material serves the function we need.
That's awesome. Okay, so one more kind of manufacturing question, especially as you think going forward, being able to go from that R&D to manufacturing to creating compostable materials can be a major challenge. Has there been any failures or unexpected roadblock that you guys have come across, and what did you guys learn from it?
Oh, yeah. Because the first thing you do when you receive, let's say, Ecovative's mycelium, like aerial mycelium foam, for example, we received this sheet and it was like, all right, well, we're going to try the methods that foam manufacturers use to cut. Guess what? Chitin dulls blades. We didn't know that. And so chitin is what mycelium is made out of. And so it breaks them down very quickly. And so you have to find alternative methods. However, I don't anticipate having to do that much R&D in the future because basically this is a new material, but the way we ultimately do produce them is with existing manufacturing methods and infrastructure. It's just not normally used for foam. So when going through R&D and manufacturing and moving from prototype to scale, it's really important in this space if you ever want to get a product to market to not have both new manufacturing methods and a new material. The new material in our case needs to be able to work in existing manufacturing and infrastructure. For example, if you are injection molding something, if you are die cutting something, has to be able to do that because it will take you way too much money, time. You probably want to pull your hair out if you do both at the same time. So basically, that's one of our constraints. We do not invent manufacturing methods. We want to make sure that there's a scalable existing way of doing that. I love that question.
I think that's super smart. And I think it's something other entrepreneurs need to hear because I think people, I'm not going to say forget, or maybe they just don't know. I hate to say it
Mhm.
that way, that there are manufacturing methods out there that you can plug and play into with these new materials.
Mhm.
You don't have to reinvent the wheel, and you don't have to raise hundreds of thousands of dollars to create your vision. And then, think about the product, the end life, the end life. I mean, there's
That's
the end
right.
life of where it actually goes, but the end life of the product, maybe not the complete end, but how it's going to be used in the world and, how long it's going to be used and how is it going to be used. I love this whole
Mhm.
backwards thinking strategy, which sounds like a bad thing, but it's a good thing.
And walking backwards is supposed to be really healthy for you, by the way. But what this
That's
reminds
right.
me of is Amanda Parks at Biofabricated did something like one of the most underlooked areas for innovation for entrepreneurs is to take successes from one industry and move them to another. I mean, this is absolutely the case in marketing,
Mhm.
but I think for manufacturing, it's even more the case. And this really, I think what you're talking to, Lauren, really speaks to that because it's
I
like
love
there's
that.
people out there who know how to manufacture things. And it's silly to think that you come up with a new material and you have a concept that someone isn't out there that has already made something that you can learn from. And sometimes you have to go to an adjacent industry to find the solution.
100%. And going back to the reinventing the wheel thing, someone on my team during a brainstorm last week said, GOB isn't reinventing the wheel, they're replacing the material of the wheel. And I just thought that was so well said and couldn't agree more. And that material might come from a completely different industry, right? Like, for example,
Yeah.
our foam is turned into leather and it's turned into bacon. When we came to Ecovative, they were not thinking earplugs. And sometimes that's the case,
Yeah.
right? Hey,
Yeah.
before you turn that into bacon, let's try that over here, right?
Yeah. Our listeners just have to go back a few episodes because we've had Evan Bear on the podcast twice talking about what they're doing with mycelium. I have two
They're
questions.
incredible.
One, I want to talk about the future. In 10 years, what do you see products like the ones you're creating have done? And how will they change what we think about consumption and waste? And what vision do you hold for like a regenerative economy? And then I have one more question before we get into quick fire.
Well, I don't think there's any lack of innovation in the product side of things. I know in my own circles over here in the Bay Area, Sway, Cruise Foam, there's so many cool companies over here innovating that I'm optimistic that that's happening everywhere. But what I do need to be true in the next 10 years is that infrastructure improves. For example, New York City doesn't even have compost available. The biggest city in the US, and yet compost is not available. That is insane to me.
But it's
And if we
required.
want
It is required. Yeah.
but people don't do it because the infrastructure is
Yeah.
not there. They have to walk blocks, right? You live in New York, is that right,
Brooklyn.
Carl,
We
or
both
no?
live in
Both do.
Brooklyn. Different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We both are
Yeah, you
on
both
different
do.
sides of
Okay.
Prospect Park. Yeah.
Yeah, and we have composting bins in our building, but I don't think everyone in our apartment building is doing that.
No, and I know my friends in New York, some of them, the compost bin is like 4 blocks away and they're still
Mhm.
expected to go drop it, you know? And so
Yeah.
the fact that it's 2025, almost 2026, and that's the case, we need to figure out our infrastructure better. Like, talk about working backwards, that's where I would start. Because a lot of folks, especially in the US, don't even have access to that. And if that's the case, then where does the product go at the end of its life? It goes to the landfill. And so I think we need to work backwards there. I'll keep it at that, but future state, that's what I'm hoping for.
You could go to like a landfill, look at everything that's in there, and be like, how do we biologize this? Which is another word with an eyes.
Yes.
Biologize, actionize.
Biologize.
But that's a good way for like people to get ideas.
Ooh.
Last question before we get into the quickfire, but where'd the name come from?
Yeah, good question.
I get asked all the time, does it stand for something? Is it from Arrested Development? Because there's that guy named Job, but it's GOB
Job. Yeah.
on Arrested Development. Neither of
Job.
those. The name came and then it never changed, basically, but it basically means a dose of something, a gob of something. And the word is kind of squishy. It has presence. It's fun to say. And so that's basically it. But really, it's a dose of something. And because everything we do is single use and it's like one thing or a pair, we wanted it to feel that way. So a gob of blank, right, is where that comes from.
Yeah,
All
it's a good
right.
word. I love it.
All right, here we go. Dun, 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 dun. Quick fire questions.
Let's go.
Okay, all right. Well, I think this was an easy one. We might get this, but these are just the questions we have. So here we go. All right. So mycelium or metal, if you had to pick one to design with forever, which and why?
Oh my God, mycelium.
Yeah.
Because metal is recyclable, but almost never gets recycled. And so I think
Yeah,
that
it's
it's
crazy.
overused in that arena. But also, we're not tapped into all of the potential use cases of this biological material. So mycelium through and through.
All right. One single use product you believe deserves a complete regenerative redesign.
I will tell
Earplugs.
you that we are working on the whole suite of things that go on your bedstand. And so that's where we're focusing now. And all the things you're ripping open and using to sleep better, those are the things we're replacing right now. So I'm going to say all of that stuff. I don't want a trash can filled with stuff by my bed. But then eventually, I know I keep saying it over and over again, but condoms, why? Done.
It's easy and cheap. What's the
Yeah.
weirdest piece of feedback you've gotten from an early GOB user?
Well, there was a question someone asked recently, which was, if my bird eats these, will my bird be okay?
Oh my
And
God,
the
that's so
answer is
funny.
yes. They're technically edible, but of all the pets to get questions about, like a bird was not something I was expecting. So I'll just say that's a funny question we received. A funny piece of feedback is, and we get this kind of often when people use them to sleep, they're so comfortable that they forget they're in. They'll go to work and be like, why can't I hear anything? Because they still have their earplugs in. So they're so comfortable that you forget that they're in sometimes. That's kind of
That's
funny
super
to me.
funny.
Yes, super comfortable. I love them. Eee, there they are. Squish, squish, squish. Okay, cool. All right. Well, Lauren, this was so much fun. I'm so happy you had a chance to get you on the podcast and speak to you about the GOB story, your story, what's next, biomaterials, actionize, biologize. So much fun.
So fun. Thank you so much for having me. This was lovely.
Thanks for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Anytime.
Hey, this episode is sponsored by Messaging Lab. At Messaging Lab, we translate complex science and economics into compelling business narratives. And we have done so for the most successful biotech forward companies across pharma, agriculture, personal care and beauty, materials, and the list goes on. We're here to make sure your ideas not only get heard, but resonate with your audience. So if it's time to amplify your company's voice and elevate your business, visit us at messaginglab.com. Let's grow.
Iram, what did you think of that interview with Lauryn?
It was such a great conversation, Carl, on so many levels. First of all, I want more people and myself, when we get there, to take a page out of Lauren and GOB's playbook. Don't need to build everything from scratch. You can take material that's been made, and I'm talking about the biomaterials industry because it's a new one, right? And people think that they have to build everything from scratch. But Lauren saw an opportunity to work with another company that was making mycelium materials to create a single use product and really focus on building a brand and storytelling around it so people can first be aware of the product and then purchase it and put a lot of effort there versus having to spend a lot of time and do a lot of calculations on making materials from scratch. So I just loved so many things about this conversation with Lauren. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, to me, she's like that next generation of biotech founders that are solving a real problem in the world. And she's not coming from the biotech world. So that means that she's not being necessarily constrained by the science. And I say that in the most positive way. And she also shows that you don't need to invent a new material from scratch, but you do need to be inventive and have some grit. So I loved the whole story of, looking around for material, seeing what Ecovative was doing, finding this Ecovative material, coming up with a way of mass producing these earplugs and making something very valuable from that. I'm super excited by what Lauren has done and how she can serve as an example to other biotech founders.
Yes, yes. And she's not just stopping with mycelium materials. She's looking at other types of materials for other products. So she listed off a few. And I just love the fact that she's like, all right, single use products, we don't need to make them from petrochemicals. Let's start there. They're going straight to the landfill right after it's used for like less than a day. Let's focus on that problem and work backwards. And not just limiting herself to mycelium, which is what she's using today, but I'm going to be curious to discover what other materials she comes across and what are those companies that she creates partnerships with to make some of these new products. So love it. Love the fact that this is just for us, we're really focused on communications and storytelling and branding. How do you put these products into consumers' hands? And here we go. Lauryn Menard of GOB has done it. And so I hope that you all have really taken this as a good example of being able to introduce biomaterials to the world.
Yeah, I'm super excited for what Lauren puts on the market next. And again, just see her as being such a great example of what is possible. And hopefully, a lot of people would take inspiration to what she's doing.
Yes. And then this kicks off another episode that we'll have next week about fungi and all of its different uses. Even though Lauren's not sticky with mycelium, it is a great material to use for many different things, and not just mycelium, which is the underground, where the mushroom's underground, the roots of the mushroom. The mushroom is actually what is above the ground, but the whole mushroom, fungi, is an incredible living material to make all sorts of different things. And we're going to have the winners of the Future of Fungi Award on this podcast next week.
That is excellent. I'm looking forward to those episodes as well.
Yes. So please like and subscribe. Follow us on YouTube. We're there. You can see us. If you're watching us on Spotify, hello. It's good to see you. Please like and share and reach out to us. Ask us questions, recommend guests, and tell us what you're excited for the holiday and for 2026.
All right, let's go.
Let's grow.